Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Rukadowski of WeAreChange.org here in Bogata, Colombia. A perfect place to talk about the failing war on drugs that have spent billions of dollars into law enforcement, into prohibition, sending countless numbers of innocent people behind bars, all because of a plant that is showing the utter failure of this entire war. And because of this failure, there are major changes, major implications in the world right now that are starting to develop. And that's why in this video, I specifically wanted to talk about the ins and outs of the marijuana business, how it's expanding, what to look out for, what to stay away from, plus a lot more. And to talk about that, we have Lucas Birdsall of ICC, the International Cannabis Corporation. You could find out more about them on wealthresearchgroup.com, which the link will be, of course, in the description below. And Lucas, holy cow, there's so many developments happening right now. The stocks going down, Monsanto trying to get into this business, Coca-Cola trying to get into this business, the Toronto Police Department telling people stop calling the police on people smoking marijuana in Canada. It's now legal. There's another article that just came out that's fascinating, that the Toronto Police Department is sending out yet another message about the cannabis trash cans that are located now at the airports for people to dispose of their marijuana, because if they fly anywhere internationally where they don't have legalized marijuana, they will get in trouble. And now they're releasing a statement saying, hey, stop stealing the weed from these canisters, and are setting up security cameras and a new box design to specifically make sure that people can't go in there and grab weed out of these bins. Now, Lucas, what do you take from all of this, and where do you see this expanding? Because we've seen the positive effects that have happened in Uruguay, that have happened in Colorado, other U.S. states, and now Canada going into this grand experiment. How do you see this unfolding into the future?
Yeah, I mean, Luke, first and foremost, appreciate your time. Everything you just described is, it's everything from dynamic to intriguing to quite comical. I'd like to just attack that question in a couple different parts here. First and foremost, when it comes to Monsanto, when it comes to Coca-Cola, vying to participate in this growing industry, I think it's very encouraging. It's a very interesting dynamic here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Coca-Cola, or if it's Constellation Brands up here in Canada, they're coming to conclusions that the cannabis industry is not only nascent, but it's growing at a rapid pace. We're seeing exponential growth across the boards here, whether it's actual cultivations, whether it's from the consumer side, or whether it's from the CBD extraction side, and they're vying, they're jockeying to establish their place in the line. Within the cannabis value chain, profit margins are quite high. And, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think they're realizing that there is a revenue generation opportunity for them within this realm. And they're trying to get ahead of it. They're trying to, acquire smaller firms. They're trying to invest in larger cannabis companies, whether it's Constellation Brands, investing, I think it was $10 billion into Canopy Growth Corp up here in Canada. But I think it's a very exciting industry, first and foremost. And I think you're going to see some of these industry behemoths and multinational corporations try to put their elbows up and get into the corners and make sure that they can scoop their piece of the pie. On the Monsanto front, I will preface our conversation with this. I am not a master grower. I am not a geneticist. I act in a strategic advisory capacity with ICC International Cannabis Corp. But I do find it slightly discouraging. We don't want Monsanto or Bayer or any of these large multinational corporations actually come in and be able to patent and trademark certain cannabis flowers, certain cannabis plants. I look forward to kind of observing the developments within that space. But all in all, I mean, this is an industry in its infancy. Of course, on October 17th up here in Canada, we celebrated federal legalization. That's for both adult cannabis consumption and cultivation. And, we're still rolling out the kinks out here, my friend. So, I look forward to giving you updates on that in the coming months.
Yeah, a lot of people are very skeptical of Monsanto and Coca-Cola, which they obviously should if you look at the track record of their corporations and all the things that they did. But you're with the ICC. Can you tell us more about this kind of group, this kind of company? Because from what I'm seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, this company makes marijuana, licenses it, and distributes it. And what is kind of the vision of this ICC?
Absolutely. Great question. So ICC International Cannabis, we are a publicly traded cannabis issuer. We are traded up here in Canada on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Our symbol is WRLD, as in world. And we also trade down south over the counter. Our symbol is KNHD. ICC International Cannabis, our mission, our vision is to become the world's first vertically integrated pure cannabis play. Now, what does that mean? It means we're looking to penetrate every single link of the cannabis value chain, whether it's direct cannabis cultivation in the form of indoor, outdoor, or hybrid greenhouse grows, whether it's the extraction of CBD from industrial hemp and cannabis flowers, or well, it's actually participating within the supplying of cannabis cultivation and growing products, hydroponics, grow lighting, ventilation, air purification systems, etc. We're hopeful to wrap that all up within our own cannabis ecosystem and eventually distribute our cannabis derivatives and our cannabis products to the end consumer. And we can do that a couple different ways. We have a pretty impressive retail footprint. In Europe, we own 35,000 different pharmacies and retail chains that have the rights to distribute cannabis in jurisdictions, of course, that permit this, as well as CBD products, and that's in Europe, all across the EU. In addition, we have a distribution footprint of 2,800 different corporate and independent pharmacies in South Africa. Now, and just to help educate your consumers, South Africa, I think it was maybe about 6 weeks ago, they decriminalized. Some of the verbiage is ambiguous, but it seems like they have decriminalized and or legalized adult consumption as well as cultivation of cannabis. That's within your own home, so you can smoke it, you can grow it, and they're hopeful that's going to help add a little bit of juice to their economy, because they are struggling a little bit down there right now.
Struggling to say the least with all the turmoil and water shortages and a lot of the other problems that South Africa is facing. But one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about specifically is you guys get licenses, and you guys were able to get a license from Greece and Poland. Poland is not a very weed-friendly place. The war on drugs is very strong there. Just even thinking about getting a license from a government to distribute marijuana just gives me panic attacks with all the thoughts of all the paperwork and all the loopholes you have to jump through. So how does that work, and how are you guys able to get these licenses?
Absolutely. So I'll kick it off with a brief overview of ICC. ICC International Cannabis is a holding company, and within our holding company we have 9 different subsidiaries, and each have either a cannabis cultivation, a CBD extraction and processing, and or a distribution licenses in different jurisdictions. So we hold 5 different licenses. That's across 4 different countries and 3 continents. And to make mention of Poland, our most recent acquisition is of a group in Poland, and they control a Polish CBD manufacturing, processing, and extraction license. So that basically allows us to go in, harvest the industrial hemp crops that we have. We have about 8,500 acres of industrial hemp crops down in Poland. And once we harvest that, we can work with regional extracting companies as well as some proprietary extraction equipment that we have ourselves. We can process the industrial hemp into CBD, and eventually we can distribute that CBD throughout our European distribution network. Just to make clear, it's not a cannabis cultivation license in Poland. It's more centered around CBD, and on the CBD side, we're seeing a massive trend of CBD adoption, whether it's in the States, whether it's in Canada, and I'm a firm believer that CBD products, CBD medicines are going to replace some traditional pharmaceuticals over the next 12, 18, 24 months.
Yeah, personally, myself, I am not a fan of THC, but I love CBD. I've been taking CBD pills, vaping CBD, and there's no denying the medical benefit and the breakthroughs that have been happening because of this plant-based medicine that has been suppressed by the pharmaceutical industrial complex. So it's interesting to see this develop, but it's common sense. The marijuana business, the CBD business is going to grow and expand. And it's interesting seeing some of the stocks behind all of this, because even when Canada announced that they were legalizing marijuana, we saw a lot of the stocks drop off. We saw a lot of people selling them off. We saw a lot of the stocks plummet down, crashing. And it's interesting to see that the marijuana stocks had their worst day ever after this news. What do you attribute this to this kind of crash? What do you think happened here, and how do you see it developing in the kind of the world economic markets, whether it's the United States, Canada, and Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very astute observation. Prior to legalization, we had quite a speculative premium built into cannabis stock pricing up here in Canada. And that's because of a lot of different reasons: lack of consistency in regulation, people unsure about, actually what was the size of the legalized industry going to be up here. And you saw a lot of institutional money, a lot of hedge funds, and smart money insert themselves in some of these cannabis stocks at much lower prices. Now, they realized amazing capital appreciation. I mean, some of these stocks have gone up thousands and thousands of percents. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when Canada legalized cannabis cultivation and consumption on a federal level, it just kind of leveled the playing field for all. And you see some of these institutions, some of these hedge funds taking profits off the table. Now, if you read some industry reports, some analyst reports pertaining to the cannabis industry, everyone is still cautiously bullish. I think that this is most definitely a buying opportunity for those looking to position themselves, whether it's Canadian, American, or international cannabis exposure. But it was something that a lot of people thought may happen, and regrettably, we all just experienced. But we're going to see a separating of the wheat from the chaff. There's many different cannabis companies up here right now. I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation within the industry, as some of these larger cannabis companies, whether it's Aurora or Canopy, begin to realize that they don't have the entire ecosystem necessary to take it from seed to sale. So consolidation is the theme going forward over the next 18 months, as well as international exposure. Traditionally, up here in Canada, you can purchase a cannabis asset, but regrettably, you have to pay quite a premium. And that's just because there was, legislation indicating that we were moving towards federal legalization, et cetera. If you move down to the United States of America, you're able to purchase some very compelling cannabis assets at a discount. And that's just because, again, there's a lack of consistent regulation across state lines from a federal perspective, as well as a lot of the tax and the sales excise taxes. They're just not consistent, and it makes for a little bit more challenging operating environment. But the true steals, the true undervalued cannabis assets are in international jurisdictions. So that's exactly why ICC International Cannabis is looking to Colombia. We currently hold a 13-hectare plot there right now. We've just broken ground on our Cannabis Center of Excellence, and that's very similar to, say, a Microsoft or an Apple technology center of excellence, whereby some of the industry's top professionals, whether they're geneticists or growers, they can assemble, they can collaborate on revolutionary cannabis products, whether it's the formulation of new cannabis strains, whether it's better ways to extract CBD. We're very excited about that. And it's also why we look to enter different jurisdictions such as Poland or Denmark or Greece or South Africa or the Kingdom of Lesotho. Ultimately, it's our objective to plant the ICC flag in as many different international jurisdictions as we can. We are deploying a buy and build strategy at this moment, and we look to actually execute and operate on these assets over the next 18 to 24 months, Luke.
Yeah, I remember being out with a friend, and she was like, I have a little bit extra money. I think I'm going to buy some marijuana stocks. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I do believe the market is a little bit overinflated with almost everyone trying to jump in there. And I would still wait because the field is still developing. And even though the economic markets and the legal jurisdiction markets are still figuring themselves out, one aspect that I specifically wanted to talk to you about is the crime rates. How are the crime rates being affected by all these changes and all these developments? Because this is having a profound impact. I would say an extremely beneficial impact, not only through medicine, but also with our society and how we live our lives.
Absolutely. Up here in Canada, cannabis has been, I don't want to use the word officially decriminalized, but it operated almost in a gray market for the past 10 or so years. It was quite rare that, someone would get a possession charge for carrying or consuming a small amount of cannabis on them in a public setting even. But you know what? After legalization, it's only been, today's we're just nearing late October, and we don't have the data sets necessary to kind of draw to conclusions. Would like to return to one of the previous case studies that you had brought up, and that's Colorado. I did read a very interesting white paper a couple of weeks ago indicating that as cannabis consumption has increased in Colorado, they've seen drops in petty crimes, vandalism, etc., that may be actually associated with perverse alcohol consumption. Now, again, we don't have the data sets really necessary to draw definitive conclusions, Luke, But I think there are some exciting trends about the drop in crime rates in jurisdictions that cannabis and cannabis derivatives have been legalized.
Awesome, Lucas. Really appreciate this whole information download. And I have just one more question. Where do you see all of this going? What are your hopes for the future, just in the entire marijuana industry, but also specifically with the ICC?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you're going to see mass consolidation, whether it's in the international jurisdictions, whether it's domestically in Canada and the United States of America. I think you're going to continue to see mass adoption of CBD products that are eventually going to replace some of the more entrenched pharmaceutical medicines that regrettably people are forced to take, whether it's because of their healthcare plan or their symptoms. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think you're going to see a continued trend towards cannabis legalization across all countries, starting probably with some European nations in 2019. And, we're hopeful that the United States of America can conform and accept that cannabis legalization is not only a benefit to stimulating the economy, but to their populace. So, let's wait for some trends to form. I think it's a very exciting industry. It's still in its infancy. I look forward to continue to operate in this environment and to watch.
Definitely exciting to see. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us today. To find out more about the ICC, definitely go check out the link in the description, wealthresearchgroup.com. If you guys have any comments or feedback, they of course are very welcome. We always answer them within the first minute within the first hour that the video is out. So make sure you click the notification button. Appreciate all of you amazing, wonderful human beings for being a part of this broadcast. And once again, stay tuned for a lot more.